Good afternoon. I'm going to talk about our trip to the Musée de l'Air et de l'Espace. In other words, the National Air and Space Museum of France, which is based on the Bourget Airport in Paris. Now, from the UK, which is what I'm going to primarily talk about, you can fly from Gatwick to Paris or you can fly from Heathrow. We flew BA from Heathrow, got the 7:30 flight. Now you lose an hour. Well, we actually got there late because the flight was delayed due to a technical fault. However, we got to the museum at 10 o'clock after taking a taxi from Charles de Gaulle. And to sum up, we spent the day at the museum, got a taxi back to Charles de Gaulle, and basically we got back home to Crawley around about 20:30 in the evening. Basically because the flight was delayed 40 minutes because of a fault down the line, and we were also delayed waiting on the ramp at Gatwick on the taxiway, pardon me, for another 40 minutes before we could have a stand because the stand guidance didn't work. Let's sort out the fact from the fiction. And the first fact is, I wouldn't believe a word TripAdvisor says. On TripAdvisor they said the staff were unhelpful, were pernickety, were rude, the food was expensive. Okay, right, let's get to the facts. The staff were really helpful. I mean, I can speak a bit of French. I'm not as fluent as I was. I'm better in Spanish. However, I could speak well enough for them to understand me, and they realised we were trying. They were absolutely lovely, all the staff there from start to finish. No problem whatsoever. The food in the canteen, look, the French don't eat like the British and the Americans, where in canteens it's fries, hamburgers, you know the kind of food I'm talking about. The French tend to eat, they have a lot more cultured view of eating. Yes, you can get McDonald's, it's at the airport, however, from my experience they tend to be a lot more cultured and demand a higher standard of food. Now on TripAdvisor it said the canteen is expensive. Well, we paid £7, €7, what's that, £5 for 2 coffees. Now they weren't the huge things that you get in Costa Coffee takeaway containers. They were like 2 glass cups, about 3/4 of the size of a mug in the UK, and the coffee was very nice, not expensive. The gift shop is supposed to be expensive according to TripAdvisors and people's views. Not at all. We didn't buy anything because everywhere we go we'd have our own gift shop. Absolutely fine, not expensive. There were things for kids, there were books. Okay, they were in French, fair enough, we're in France. It was a really nice gift shop with some high-end items, some children's items. I thought it was fine. No problems at all. Look, the bottom line is, if you go somewhere and you behave like an arsehole, you're going to be treated like an arsehole. And it's that simple. The way I've seen some people behave when I've been away, I wouldn't let them in, let alone be rude to them. Anyway, let's get on with some of these pictures that we've taken of the museum. Now here is the entrance to the museum. Taxi can drop you off, no problem. And you walk through the doors and you go through security. They've got a scanner there. It's standard security. They check your bags. No tripods allowed. You're only allowed a bag of a certain size. Ours was on the limit. No problem whatsoever. They do have lockers there. We didn't use one. Now what I will say is the main hall, and we're walking into it now, and you will see the clock on the wall because it is the old Le Bourget airport terminal, obviously now being used as a museum, and that's where you buy your tickets. And you go in there and it is warm. However, everywhere else around the museum is not as warm. So if it's in winter, I wore quite a large coat and a sweatshirt, jeans, walking boots. Yeah, and I was a little bit warm inside the main World War I area where you're going to see all these planes coming up now. But other than that, absolutely fine. Now you walk in and it's a World War I hall. What do they call it? The Great War Hall. And there's some fantastic planes here. Restored aircraft, originals, some variations of early examples of flight. There's just so much there. You really do need to have a look yourselves and see what there is. I mean, for example, there's a SPAD 7 that was flown by the French flying ace Georges Guillemard in World War One. That's interesting to see. A Junkers D1 by Hugo Junkers. There's some really rare stuff here that's really interesting from World War One, and you could spend an hour, 2 hours in here. We spend a lot of time, but what's nice is it's laid out like a museum. It's not like a load of aircraft with their wings covering each other, where it's basically fitting as much as we can. It's a warehouse, not a plain museum, and not enjoyable. This was really thoroughly enjoyable. Now, unfortunately, the interwar hall was closed when we were there. There's always something closed to whatever museum you go to, and we knew that before we went. However, you walk round it outside and you come to the helicopter part. There's some really interesting helicopters here, and obviously by the size of the rotors, unless you've got acres of space, they are difficult to display. However, really interesting, some interesting gyrocopters, and some really rare stuff in there. Really interesting. A bit laid out like a warehouse rather than a museum, I would suggest. However, with helicopters you do really need a lot of space. The prototype hangar, well, that was amazing. As you will see in the pictures, there's stuff there that was like it was from Flash Gordon or Thunderbirds or any 50s movies. You could spend so much time in here. I didn't read everything, but there is some really amazing stuff, and I never realised the French had spent so much money on Delta Wing and aircraft development in the 1950s. The Coquard Hall is superb, and that's between the helicopter hall and the prototypes hall. And they've got a Vampire there, they've got a Super Sabre there, they've got various jets there, and you'll see looking at the pictures the way they are displayed, the light they are in, you can see the planes. It's laid out like a proper museum. Really, really impressed. The World War II hall, there's not a lot there. It's interesting, and what they have is pretty cool. They've got a Spitfire, a Thunderbolt, a DC-3, a Focke-Wulf 190, a very early Douglas Sky Raider. They've only got a few World War II planes, however what they do have is interesting. In my view, the raison d'etre of this museum is a Concorde hangar. They are displayed correctly in a weatherproof environment, just two of them. You can walk round them, you can go in them. There's a prototype there, and there is a flying example used by Air France. Absolutely superb, world class. You can photograph them. It's brilliant in there. They're not stuffed at the back of a museum like they are at Washington, like it is at Washington, or stuck on the end of an aircraft carrier in a pouring rain in New York, or stuck outside in the rain at Brooklands. They are preserved beautifully, and I can't say enough how really well this is done. It really was a superb experience, seeing these aircraft being well looked after, and even today they look like something from outer space. Outdoors on, I would say, is the apron area of the Bourget Airport is impressive. They've got a 380 there. What is interesting to see is an old 747-200 series, and how they used to have a lounge upstairs in the bubble, and the way first class seats have changed, the way economy seats have changed and club seats have changed. That was really interesting. You can see inside the frame of the 747, which is really interesting. There's a few satellite rockets there, some French fighters there. There's a Caravelle there. It's interesting. There's some interesting stuff there. It's well spaced out. It's not cramped in. There's loads of floor space, and it's really, really easy to see. took a couple of pictures inside the Space Centre. There's lots there. It's on about 4 different levels, and I'll be honest, I didn't really know much about it, but we looked in it. Really, to take pictures you'd need a tripod. Obviously I didn't have one because it wasn't allowed. However, what we did see was really interesting. Here are a couple of pictures of the canteen, and you can see by the little fruit desserts laid out, it's not McDonald's, it's not a burger joint. The food here, what I could see them eating, was very, very good. And being a bit naughty, a guy left a basket full of bread, and they left it on the table and ate some of the bread. And the bread there was superb. And no, we're not total peasants, but I wasn't going to eat a meal in there when I got a meal on the plane to eat. I just can't eat like I could when I was 15. In conclusion, is this museum worth going to? Definitely, 1000% if there was such a thing. People are really, really friendly. The food in the restaurant is not junk. If you want junk food, have it at the airport or in town. In my opinion, the prices are reasonable. Everything is just so nice. It's clean. The toilets are clean. The security staff are polite. And they've got some real gems in this museum. But most importantly, I would rather come to a museum where less is more. By this I mean the planes are displayed correctly, loads of people can walk round them, they're not cramped in, it's not like an aircraft hangar, there's loads of viewing space, you're able to take pictures. The whole experience for everybody was spot on. You go to RAF Duxford, one of our national plane museums, it's awful, they're just slammed in there. You go to Cosford, I think it was we went to, where it's an abomination really, but here the planes are really displayed in a very well thought out, logical manner, well lit so you can see them. I can't praise this museum more than I am. I'm surprised, pleasantly surprised. Go there, see and have a wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed my slideshow of the National Aircraft Museum in France at Le Bourget Airport, or in French, Musée de l'Air et de l'Espace. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Thank you for watching. Thank you.